company in the US to make an example of, so just paying the fine might not be safe.
Yeah, I would say that it's not safe, just think this way.
So what is the class for repeat violation? Going back to the same question, right? I mean, I commit a crime, I pay a fine, what person has done. Say if I repeat it again.
So as an example...
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, okay. So the question was like, if I pay the fine, what next? So for example, as I mentioned, Facebook was fined with daily fines, so 250,000 per day. So how long can you afford it to pay? What would be next if you continue not being compliant? For example, some European countries have came out with possibility with class action lawsuits, so people can additionally sue companies, and I don't know. So I would advise contact lawyer, and I definitely would advise just not pay fines, but to actually become compliant. That is much better way to deal with it. So, and well, kind of coming to this, if I just pay fines, right, who will be taking actions? Well, they will go after big companies. So just this year until today, ICO, its agency in UK, they have done, is it visible here? Yeah, right, they have in 30 audits they have done already, completely random companies. They were looking into the information security, and this is all before GDPR. So countries are starting ramping up to do it. Germany, privacy regulators find it's already 3 companies, and WhatsApp, I think it was just yesterday, was forbidden to share data between them and Facebook. So they come to agreement. So it's the governments are ramping up the agencies, and I think they will be taking it seriously. At least I hope that.
Company, and people weren't going to be able to ship product or all these doomsday scenarios. And when it actually got into implementation, primarily manufacturing organizations were involved like ISO 9000, and and as far as I know, they're like that maybe stop ship. So it seems like the European Union has a history of coming along and saying, putting in these stringent regulations, and then it actually comes to actually implementing the back off or maybe
Well, I think matters is a little bit serious now. So the question was like, how do we know if it will not become just another ISO standard that like, well, it's there and who cares about it? So I think the matters are more serious now, especially with cybersecurity and looking about all the security breaches that are happening, like crypto mining on websites. And I think the biggest difference is that actually now consumer has all these rights that I will come to that, right? So your kind of question is, so what? But now the things are changing in the way that I am as consumer whose data getting collected, I have rights. And these rights I can exercise, and if companies don't comply, there is means for class suit actions and go to authorities. So with ISO standard, it's slightly different because it is between companies, somewhere in paperwork. This is in essence actionable, and consumers, hopefully, they will be more aware at least about the data privacy. So what are those actual requirements? There's plenty of them, and this is just a very brief summary of all of them. So firstly, coming back to consumer and your question, that the consent must be given by me before you can do anything by data. Or not by me, I mean by anybody who collects data. So any person. And the consent, it's no longer sufficient to have this privacy box after 10 pages. It has to be explicit and specified and the data that is collected have to be for legitimate purpose. So if I, for some reason, design a vacuum cleaner that runs inside apartments, and suddenly I collect data about your furniture and want to sell it, this is no longer, in principle, would be a legitimate use case of the service you're providing to me, all right? And also data subjects or customers, your customers, have rights, and I will go more into detail about it. They also have to be record of processing. So what are you doing with this data? Are you sharing it? How are you using it? In some cases, you may need to employ your data protection officer or give somebody, empower somebody with this privacy title. And also, some companies may need to do data impact assessment to kind of to put all infrastructure, understand and document what is done to protect this data. Also, the new change is that data breach notification has to be specific and done within 72 hours. So this is one of the harder things also for companies to implement. Like, so how do you know that data have been breached, and then collect all the necessary information, notify your users, and notify impacted authorities within the 72 hours. And what is more interestingly coming is that now the requirement is to have data protection by design. This is probably also one of more nebulous, how do you backward implement it, right? And as some of you mentioned it about cross-border data transfer, so it has to be legitimate purpose and data has to be equally protected from there. And let's dive slightly into detail about some of these interesting compliance things. Are you still awake there? Oh yeah. So good. Compliance usually can be tricky business, like to make people listen, and that's good that you're still with me. So what does it mean that consent must be given specified, explicit, and legitimate purpose? So companies are required in principle to become transparent and clearly communicate with people what data we're collecting and why, and show that actually this collection and processing has to do with the service you are provided, as I mentioned in vacuum cleaner example. It also, you have to companies provide an easy control to retract the consent. So it's no longer enough, when you sign up for some SaaS service, I click yes, collect all my data, and it's done forever until service dies or me. Now you have to provide the means to engage with the end user. So I have to have a button where I can go and retract my consent for all service or for parts. And that is not enough. The whole business has to be easy understood. So it has to be put in layman's words, in simple explanations, and not hidden in 10 pages. So, and data subjects have a lot of rights. And maybe this is where hopefully it will be different from ISO standards, that here you have people are giving this right to access. So what data you are collecting, to see actually, to do request and download it or view it in any format. So it also gives me the right for rectification. So if, as an example, a newspaper was published about somebody's criminal records and it was wrong publication, there have to be a means how you can change it and rectify this information. As well, the right of erasure, it goes beyond public links or website. If I have been customer or your customers eventually decides to leave your product or SaaS platform or mobile, you need to delete upon my request all my data. So in some cases here it can be, if it's financial transactions, the deletion can occur maybe later, but if it's data that is not related and is not governed by other regulations, you need to delete this data and store evidence that you actually do it. Because I can go and complain to authorities if I receive any email from you again once you said I deleted you from my marketing events, right?
Let's say that the subject is, let's say, a medical patient, and they want access to medical information pertaining to them. Now, right now in the U.S., there's an issue that a number of medical devices that are connected to the internet, a U.S. citizen might have one such device in their home, but they are not allowed to see that information. That happens in the U.S. So let's pretend I'm a European citizen, and I have one of these internet-connected heart monitors. Am I allowed 01 access? Can I see my heart monitor information? Is that what the word access
Oh,
is?
yes. I would say that this would be, besides you needing to inform the user what data you are collecting, very explicit. So if you're collecting anything else besides heart rate, you need to tell it, and you need to get consent for it, and then you need to have the provide ability to get this data.
Okay, so thank you.
Welcome.
But that brings up an interesting question, in that if you're in these trials, a lot of times you're not permitted to know whether or not, you've got the placebo or something else, and so is that...
So a lot of regulations kind of not have a lot of unknowns, right? So yeah. So if this is for some legitimate purpose, you are not giving this information. It was part of contract that, hey, we need this for blind study. I don't know simply. Like that would be a case for attorneys to look into that. Because there is very specific scenarios and cases that occur in these situations that like nobody knows probably. And in some cases it will maybe have to go to court to settle it, to kind of to understand what does it actually regulation mean.
So because I can see that there are situations where you might want to sign away your right, is that...
You cannot do that. You cannot sign it away, no. So about trials, this is a very interesting question, and I would like to know also how it will work out. But at this point, I just simply don't know. It's a very difficult question. Thank you. Yes, and the right to be informed. So this is also relates to trials or medical or any devices, kind of that the person has the right to be informed what is collected about them, why, where it is stored, and for how long it will be stored. So it's no longer, even if you get a consent, there has to be an expiration date on the data, which can be good or bad for the company, but it has to be defined clearly. And what additional interesting is data portability. So as a customer, I have the right to download all my data, and it has to be in format that is portable. Whatever it means today, nobody knows. It may be JSON or Excel or like XML or whatever. I think that will depend on the industry, but the data has to be in the format that it's you cannot send PDF.